Jake Morrison walked through the bright halls of Kepler Station with slow steps. His left leg made soft clicking sounds against the metal floor. The leg was not real anymore. It was made of metal and wires after the battle that took everything from him 3 years ago. The scars on his face looked like lightning had struck him and left its mark forever. Other beings in the station looked at him and whispered behind their hands. The Zephyrians were tall and thin with skin that looked like crystal. They sparkled when they moved and their voices sounded like music. When they saw Jake, they turned away and made soft sounds of disgust. The Korthan were different. They had 4 big arms and thick skin like stone. Their warriors were famous across the galaxy for being strong and brave. But when they saw Jake, they shook their heads and laughed quietly. The Veilter were the smartest race anyone knew. Their heads were huge and they could think faster than computers. They looked at Jake like he was a broken machine that should be thrown away. Even the humans on the station felt sorry for him. They remembered when Captain Jake Morrison was the youngest person ever to lead a ship into deep space. They remembered when he was the golden boy of Earth Fleet. Now he was something else. Now he was the man who lost an entire fleet to the machines called Devourers. Commander Lisa Brooks waited for Jake at the big doors that led to the council chamber. She wore her best uniform and her medals shined under the bright lights. But her face showed worry when she looked at Jake. She had been his friend for many years. She knew him when he was whole and perfect and full of dreams about exploring the stars. "Jake, you don't have to do this," she said in a quiet voice. "I can speak for Earth instead." Jake stopped walking and looked at her. His eyes were still the same blue they had always been, but now they held something different. Something that looked like old pain that never went away. "They asked for Earth's best warrior," he said. "That's me. But Jake, look at yourself." Lisa said, and her voice cracked a little. "They're going to laugh at you." "Let them laugh," Jake said. "I stopped caring what they think a long time ago." The doors opened with a soft sound, and Jake walked into the biggest room on Kepler Station. The council chamber was round and had seats for representatives from 50 different worlds. The ceiling was made of clear material so you could see the stars outside. In the middle of the room was a round table made of black stone from the Veilter. Homeworld. Jake took his place at the table. Around him sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Warlord Thaktar of the Korthan Empire was so big he needed 2 chairs. His 4 arms were covered in scars from 100 battles. Each scar was a story of victory. High Counselor Zarolin of the Zephyrians sat across from him. Her crystal skin caught the light and made rainbow colors dance on the walls. Prime Thinker Volmith of the Veilter had a head so big he needed special supports to hold it up. All of them were staring at Jake. The meeting started when Fleet Admiral Kekstar of the United Systems stood up. He was old and gray and had been fighting wars since before Jake was born. "The Devourers have returned," he said, and his voice filled the big room. "After 100 years of silence, they are moving again. They consumed the Outer Rim colonies. In less than a week, 3 billion souls are gone. Eaten by machines that should not exist." Pictures appeared in the air above the table. They showed planets that were once green and full of life. Now they were gray balls of nothing. The Devourers had taken everything. Every tree, every animal, every person. Even the air was gone. "We must act fast," Admiral Kekstar continued. "Each of our races will send their finest warriors and best ships. Together we will stop these machines before they reach the core worlds, one by one." The representatives stood up and made their promises. The Korthan would send 50 dreadnought ships and 10,000 warriors. The Zephyrians would send their crystal fleet and their energy weapons that could cut through anything. The Veilter would send their command ships with computers that could think a million thoughts at once. Then it was Earth's turn. Jake stood up slowly. His metal leg made a soft sound as it straightened. The room became very quiet. Everyone was looking at him. Some looked curious. Others looked like they were trying not to laugh. "Earth pledges the Use Defiance and her crew," Jake said in a clear voice. The silence lasted for 3 seconds. Then Warlord Thaktar started laughing. It was a deep sound that shook the walls. Soon other Korthan were laughing too. Even some of the humans looked embarrassed. "This is a joke," Thaktar said with his forearms spread wide. "Earth sends us one broken ship with a broken captain. We ask for warriors and they give us this scarred thing," High Counselor Zarelin did. Not laugh, but her voice was cold as winter. "Captain Morrison, with respect, your last battle did not end well. Perhaps Earth should let others handle this threat." "The Battle of Titan's Edge was 3 years ago," said Prime Thinker Volmuth. "The official reports say you lost 12 ships and 15,000 people to poor tactics. Why should we trust you?" Now, Jake listened to all of this without moving. His face showed nothing. The scars on his cheek looked deeper under the bright lights. When the room got quiet again, he spoke. "You're right," he said. "I lost everything at Titan's Edge. My ship, my crew, my friends. The Devourers ate them all while I watched. That makes me the only person in this room who knows what we're really fighting. You know how to lose," Thaktar said, and laughed again. "That is not the same thing." "Maybe not," Jake said, "but it's something." He turned to look at Admiral Kekstar. "Sir, Earth's answer stands. The used Defiance will join the fleet." The Admiral nodded, but his eyes looked sad. "Very well, Captain Morrison. Report to your ship and prepare for deployment." Jake walked toward the doors. Behind him the laughter started again. He could hear them, talking about the crazy humans and their broken captain. He could hear them making bets about how long he would last in the next battle. Commander Lisa Brooks was waiting outside the chamber. Her face was red with anger. "Jake, those bastards had no right to treat you like that," she said. "They had every right," Jake said. "I did lose at Titan's Edge. I did get good people killed." "They're not wrong about that. But you survived," Lisa said. "There has to be a reason for that." Jake stopped walking and looked out a big window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were moving toward the core worlds. Somewhere out there, machines older than civilization were eating everything in their path. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I'm just too stubborn to die." He started walking again. His metal leg clicked against the floor with each step. Behind him, the council chamber was full of the sound of important people making important plans. They talked about strategies and weapons and how to save the galaxy. None of them noticed that Jake Morrison was smiling. The used Defiance looked old and tired sitting in the docking bay. Her hull was covered in patches and welds from 100 small repairs. The paint was faded and some of her armor plates were dented from battles long ago. She was not the kind of ship that inspired fear in enemies or confidence in allies. But she was Jake Morrison's ship, and that made her special in ways that did not show on the outside. Lieutenant Commander Sam Parker was waiting on the bridge when Jake arrived. Sam had been with him for 5 years and knew him better than most people. He was a tall man with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. When other captains offered him better positions on newer ships, he always said no. Some people thought he was crazy for staying loyal to a broken captain on a broken ship. "Sir, the crew is ready for departure," Sam said. "We received our mission orders 20 minutes ago." Jake sat down in his captain's chair. It was old leather that had been worn smooth by years of use. The chair creaked when he moved, but it fit him perfectly. Around him the bridge was small and cramped compared to the huge command centers on alien ships. But every console worked and every system responded when needed. "What's our destination?" Jake asked. "Vortani system, sir," Sam said. "Long-range sensors. Detected Devourer ships there 6 hours ago. We're supposed to join the main fleet and provide support." Jake nodded, but said nothing. The Vortani system was 3 days away at maximum jump speed. That gave him time to prepare his crew for what was coming. Time to share things he had never told anyone. Chief Engineer Maria Santos climbed up from the engine room with grease on her hands and worry on her face. She was small and quick with black hair that never stayed neat no matter how many times she tied it back. She had kept the Defiance running for 3 years with spare parts and pure stubbornness. "Captain, I've got the engines running at 90%, she said. "But if we push them too hard, they might not hold together. This old girl needs a full overhaul, and we both know it. How long can she give us full power when we need it?" Jake asked. Maria thought for a moment. "Maybe an hour, sir. 2 hours if we're lucky." After that, we'll be running on emergency power only. Weapons specialist Danny Chun looked up from his console. He was young and eager with bright eyes that reminded Jake of himself before Titan's Edge. Danny could make their old weapons sing like they were brand new. He knew every circuit and every power coupling in the ship's weapon systems. "Sir, our plasma cannons are charged and ready," Danny said. "But we only have enough power cells for sustained fire for 30 minutes. The alien ships have weapons that can fight for hours." Navigator Amy Foster was quiet as always. She sat at her station plotting courses through space that most pilots would never dare to try. She had red hair and freckles and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of space. But she was also the best navigator in the fleet, even though nobody knew it. "Captain, I found us a route to Vortani that cuts 6 hours off our travel time," she said, "but we'll have to go through the broken fields." The broken fields were a dangerous area of space filled with asteroids and radiation that could kill a ship if the pilot made one wrong move. Most captains avoided them completely. But Amy Foster could thread a needle at faster than light speed and make it look easy. "Do it," Jake said. "We need every advantage we can get." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars became streaks of light outside the windows. Jake stood up and looked around at his crew. These people had followed him through hell and back. They deserved to know the truth about what happened at Titan's Edge and what they were really flying into. "Sam, set the ship to autopilot and gather everyone in the meeting room," Jake said. "It's time I told you all something." 10 minutes later, the entire crew of the Defiance sat around a small table in the ship's meeting room. There were only 15 people total, but they were good people. People who knew how to fight and how to survive when everything went wrong. Jake stood at the head of the table and looked at each face. These people trusted him even after Titan's Edge, even after the whole galaxy called him a failure and a fool. "You all know the official story about Titan's Edge," Jake said. "The reports say I made tactical errors that got 12 ships destroyed. They say I was careless and cost 15,000 lives." The room was completely quiet. Outside the ship, the stars raced by at impossible speed. "The reports are wrong," Jake continued. "We didn't lose because of bad tactics. We lost because the Devourers are smarter than anyone knows. They learn from every battle they fight. Every weapon we used against them, every formation, every strategy. They remembered all of it." Sam Parker leaned forward. "Sir, what exactly happened out there?" Jake touched the scars on his face. For a moment he was back in the burning wreckage of his first command, watching his friends die around him. "The Devourers didn't just attack us," he said. "They used our own weapons against us. They turned our shields into traps and our communications into weapons. Everything we thought we knew about fighting them was useless because they had learned how to counter it." Maria Santos spoke up. "But sir, you survived. How did you get out?" "I didn't get out," Jake said. "I was trapped in the wreckage of my ship for 17 hours. The Devourer machines were all around me, studying me, learning from me. But here's the thing nobody knows. While they were learning from me, I was learning from them too." The crew exchanged looks. This was not what they expected to hear. "Every piece of metal in my leg, every scar on my body," Jake continued, "they're not just marks of what I lost. They're connections to Devourer technology. For 3 years I've been having dreams about their ships, their systems, their way of thinking. I know things about them that no one else knows." Danny Chun's eyes were wide. "Sir, are you saying you can predict what they'll do?" "Better than that," Jake said. "I think I know how to beat them. But it's not going to be anything like a normal space battle. We're going to do something that no military force has ever tried before." "What's that, sir?" Amy asked. Jake smiled, and for the first time in years it was not a sad smile. "We're going to board one of their ships." The silence in the room was so complete you could hear the engines humming 3 decks below. Finally, Sam Parker found his voice. "Sir, the survival rate for boarding a Devourer ship is 0, he said. "Nobody has ever done it and lived. That's because nobody has ever understood them the way I do," Jake said. "The big alien fleets are going to attack the Devourers the same way. Everyone always attacks them, with formations and strategies and tactics that the machines have seen 1,000 times before. While they're busy learning how to counter all of that, we're going to slip in through the back door. He looked around the table at faces that showed fear and doubt and something else, something that looked like hope. I won't lie to you, Jake said. This is probably a suicide mission. If anyone wants to transfer to another ship, I'll make sure it happens. No questions asked and no hard feelings. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Maria Santos crossed her arms and grinned. Captain, this old ship has kept us alive for 3 years, she said. I'm not about to abandon her now. One by one, the others nodded. They were staying. All of them. Jake felt something warm grow in his chest. Something he had not felt since before. Titan's Edge. It took him a moment to recognize what it was. It was hope. The Vortani system looked like a graveyard when the combined fleet arrived. 3 planets that once held millions of people were now gray balls of dust floating in empty space. The Devourers had eaten everything that lived and breathed and left. Nothing behind but silence. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched through the main screen as hundreds of alien ships took their positions. The Corthan dreadnoughts were massive things with thick armor and weapons that could crack a moon in half. Each one was 3 times bigger than the Defiance and carried enough firepower to level a city. The Zephyrian crystal ships looked like flying diamonds that caught the light from the system's dying star. They moved in perfect formation like dancers in some deadly ballet. Their energy weapons could cut through any known metal and their shields could stop almost any attack. The Veltor command vessels were different from everything else. They looked like metal brains with thousands of sensor arrays and communication dishes. From these ships, the smartest beings in the galaxy would coordinate the battle with computer precision. Sir, we're receiving formation orders from the flagship. Sam Parker said from his station. Admiral Kekstar wants us to take position with the reserve squadron. Jake almost smiled. The reserve squadron was where they put the ships nobody expected to survive. Old vessels with green crews and captains who had made too many mistakes. It was the perfect place for a broken human ship with a broken human captain. Acknowledge the orders, Jake said, but don't take that position yet. Amy Foster looked up from her navigation console. Sir, where do you want me to put us? Jake pointed to a cluster of asteroids floating near the edge of the system. Hide us in that debris field. Keep us dark and quiet. The Defiance moved like a ghost through the floating rocks. Her old engines barely made a sound, and her hull was so patched and scarred that she looked like just another piece of wreckage. Amy guided them to a spot behind the biggest asteroid where they could see everything but nobody could see them. Then they waited. The enemy came out of nowhere and everywhere at once. Reality seemed to tear open in 3 places, and the Devourer ships poured through like nightmares made of metal and math. They were not like any ships the galaxy had ever built. They had angles that hurt to look at and surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. The largest Devourer construct was the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that shifted and changed as Jake watched. Smaller ships orbited around it like planets around a star. Each one was bigger than a Corthan dreadnought. Sweet mother of stars, Danny Chun whispered. How many of them are there? Sensors show 47 enemy contacts, Sam reported, but sir, the readings don't make sense. Some of these ships are showing mass readings that should be impossible. Jake nodded. He had seen this before at Titan's Edge. The Devourers did not follow the rules that normal ships had to obey. They could bend space and time and gravity to their will. Admiral Kekstar's voice echoed across all fleet frequencies, all ships. Attack Formation Alpha 7. Engage the enemy. The alien fleet moved forward like a great wave of metal and fire. The Corthan ships led the charge with their massive guns already spinning up to full power. Behind them, the Zephyrian vessels began to glow as their energy weapons built up charge. The Veltor command ships stayed back and started sending targeting data to everyone else. For a moment, Jake thought it might actually work. The combined fleet had more ships and more firepower than any force in galactic history. Surely even the Devourers could not stand against such overwhelming might. Then the battle began, and Jake remembered why nightmares existed. The Devourers were ready for everything. when the Korthan dreadnoughts fired their massive kinetic weapons. The enemy ships caught the projectiles in some kind of energy field and sent them flying back twice as fast. The proud Korthan vessels exploded under their own gunfire. The Zephyrian crystal ships released their stored energy in beams that could cut through a planet. But the Devourer constructs seemed to drink the energy like water and grow brighter and stronger. Then they sent the power back as waves of force that shattered crystal hulls like glass. The Veilter tried to coordinate a tactical retreat, but their communication networks were suddenly full of viruses and false data. Their perfect computers began giving impossible orders and contradicting themselves. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. In less than 10 minutes, half the alien fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were running in all directions like scared children. "My God," Sam Parker said, "they're slaughtering them." Jake watched the carnage with cold eyes. This was exactly what happened at Titan's Edge. The Devourers had learned from every battle they ever fought. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was already known to them. They had perfect counters for everything the galaxy could throw at them. "Maria, how are our engines?" Jake asked. "Ready to give you everything she's got." "Captain," Maria's voice came from engineering, "but you know what happens if we push too hard." "Danny, are the boarding pods ready?" "Yes, sir," Danny said, "all 6. Pods are armed and loaded." "But Captain, are we really going to do this?" Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked to the main screen. The largest Devourer construct filled most of the view. It was so massive that it had its own gravity field. Smaller pieces of debris were being pulled into it and absorbed into its hull. "Amy, I need you to plot us a course through that wreckage field," Jake said. "Use the debris from the alien ships as cover." "Sir, that's suicide," Amy said. "The radiation from those explosions will fry our shields in minutes, not if we're fast enough." Jake said, "How long to reach the big construct?" Amy's fingers danced over her controls. "At maximum burn, maybe 3 minutes, sir. But the ship won't survive it." Jake turned to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him with fear and trust and something that looked like love. These people had followed him into hell once before, and they were ready to do it again. "Listen to me," Jake said. "What we're about to do has never been done before. Every military academy in the galaxy teaches that boarding a Devourer ship is impossible. They say the survival rate is 0. He paused and touched the scars on his face. "Maybe they're right," he continued, "but here's what they don't understand. Sometimes the only way to win is to do something so crazy that your enemy never saw it coming. The Devourers have learned how to counter every weapon and every tactic, but they've never had to deal with humans who are too stupid to know when they're beaten." Sam Parker actually smiled at. "Sir, what are your orders?" "Full power to engines," Jake said. "All power from life support and artificial gravity. We're going in fast and hard." "Aye, sir." Maria's voice crackled over the reactor at 110% and climbing. "This old girl is going to burn bright." The Defiance shot out from behind the asteroid like a bullet from a gun. Her engines glowed white-hot, and her hull began to vibrate from the strain. Around them, pieces of destroyed alien ships tumbled through space, still glowing from their deaths. "Devourer sensors are tracking us," Sam reported. "They're moving to intercept." "They're too late," Jake said. "Amy, take us straight down their throat." The massive Devourer construct grew larger and larger until it filled their entire view. Jake could see details on its hull now. Symbols that moved and changed, openings that appeared and disappeared, lights that pulsed in patterns that made his head hurt. "Boarding pods ready," Danny announced. 30 seconds to launch. Jake activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is your captain. In 20 seconds, we're going to do something that nobody has ever done before. We're going to board a Devourer ship and find out what makes these bastards tick. Some of you might not make it back. Hell, most of you probably won't make it back. But if we succeed today, the galaxy will remember what humans can do when we stop following the rules." The Defiance shuddered as they entered the Devourer's energy field. Alarms began screaming and sparks flew from overloaded systems. "Hull temperature rising," Maria reported. "We've got fires on 3 decks. Almost there, Amy said through gritted teeth. 10 seconds to launch point. Jake strapped himself into a boarding pod and sealed his helmet. Around him, 4 other crew members did the same. They were going into the belly of the beast with nothing but courage and desperation. Launch pods, Jake ordered. The last thing he saw before the pod shot into space was the bridge of his ship. Sam. Parker was still at his station trying to keep the Defiance together for a few more seconds. The old ship had given them everything she had, and now she was dying, but she had gotten them this far. The boarding pod slammed into the hull of the Devourer. Construct and Jake Morrison entered a place where no human had ever been before. The inside of the Devourer ship was wrong in ways that made Jake's head hurt. The corridors stretched in directions that should not exist and walls bent at angles that his eyes could not follow. The air itself felt thick and strange like breathing. Underwater. But Jake Morrison had been here before in his dreams for 3 years, and somehow he knew which way to go. Behind him, Chief Petty Officer Tony Miller carried enough explosives to level a city block. He was a big man with steady hands and nerves that never shook no matter how bad things got. Sergeant Lisa Hayes led the second team deeper into the ship with weapons ready and eyes alert for any sign of danger. The corridors around them pulsed with dim light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The walls were covered in symbols that moved and changed when nobody was looking directly at them. Sometimes Jake thought he could almost understand what they meant, but the knowledge slipped away like water through his fingers. "Captain, this place is giving me the creeps," Tony said in a whisper. "The geometry doesn't make sense." "Stay close and follow my lead," Jake replied. "I know where we need to go." They moved through passages that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked. Doors appeared when they needed them and disappeared when they were no longer useful. Jake's metal leg clicked softly against the strange floor. Material that felt like crystal and metal and something else that had no name. From somewhere in the walls came sounds like whispers in languages that had never been spoken by living throats. The Devourer ship was alive in ways that normal ships were not. It thought and dreamed and remembered everything it had ever consumed. "Contact ahead," Lisa Hayes reported through the comm. "Some kind of maintenance drones." Jake looked around the corner and saw 3 spider-like machines working on a wall panel. They had too many legs and tools that shifted and changed as they worked. When they sensed the humans, they turned with movements that were too fast and too smooth. "Take them down quiet," Jake ordered. Lisa's team moved like shadows. Their weapons made soft sounds like sighs, and the maintenance drones collapsed without making any noise, but Jake knew it was too late. The ship already knew they were here. He could feel its attention turning toward them like the gaze of some vast and terrible. "Move faster," he said. "We don't have much time." They ran through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Past rooms filled with machinery that hummed with purposes beyond human understanding. Past chambers where lights danced in patterns that made Jake's scars itch and burn. His metal leg was getting warm, like it was responding to something in the ship's systems. Then they found the first horror. It was a room filled with tanks of clear liquid. Inside each tank floated the body of a different alien species. Korthan warriors with their 4 arms spread wide. Zephyrian crystals that still sparkled even in death. Veilter with their massive heads open to show the complex brains inside. "Dear God," Tony Miller breathed. "How long have they been collecting these?" Jake walked between the tanks reading labels written in symbols that somehow made sense to him now. Each one showed a date and a location. Some were from battles that happened last week, others were from wars that ended before humans ever left their home planet. "They're not just killing our people," Jake said. "They're studying them. Learning everything about how we fight, how we think, how we live." At the end of the room, they found something that made Jake's blood turn to ice in his veins. 3 tanks that held human bodies. People he recognized from the Battle of Titan's Edge. His communications officer, Lieutenant Kevin Barnes. His weapons specialist, Captain Helen Ross. His best friend and second-in-command, Major Steve Taylor. "Captain, are those?" Lisa Hayes started to ask. "My crew," Jake finished. "The people who died when my ship was destroyed. They've been here for 3 years. He walked closer to Steve's tank and put his hand against the cold surface. His friend's face looked peaceful, like he was just sleeping. But Jake knew better. The Devourers had taken Steve's body and mind and memories. Everything that made him human was now part of this terrible ship. "We need to keep moving," Tony said gently. "Sir, there's nothing we can do for them now." Jake nodded, but he could not look away from his friend's face. For 3 years he had wondered why he survived when everyone else died. Now he was starting to understand. The Devourers had let him live because they were not done studying him yet. They left the chamber of horrors and went deeper into the ship. The corridors here were different, older. The symbols on the walls showed star maps of galaxies that no longer existed. This ship had been traveling and learning and consuming for longer than most stars had been burning. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy readings ahead," Lisa reported. "Whatever they're doing in there, it's big." They came to a door that was larger than the others. It opened without sound to reveal a chamber so vast that Jake could not see the other side. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the floor was covered in a maze of machines that pulsed with their own inner light. In the center of it all was something that took Jake's breath away. It was a perfect sphere made of some material that looked like liquid metal. Inside the sphere, Jake could see images flowing like water, battles from across the galaxy, ships being destroyed, planets being consumed. Every war the Devourers had ever fought was recorded here. "It's a memory core," Jake said, with wonder in his voice. "They keep everything they learn in there." But as they got closer, Jake saw something that made his heart race. Mixed in with all the alien battles and unknown worlds were scenes he recognized. The Battle of Titan's Edge played over and over in perfect detail. He could see his own ship being torn apart. He could see himself floating in the wreckage while Devourer machines studied his broken body. "Captain, look at this," Tony called from across the chamber. Jake turned to see Tony standing next to a wall covered in what looked like a family tree. But instead of people, it showed different types of ships and weapons and tactics. Each branch showed how the Devourers had learned to counter a new threat, how they had adapted and evolved to beat every enemy they had ever faced. At the bottom of the tree was a new branch that was still growing. It showed human ships and human weapons and human battle plans. But this branch was different from all the others. It kept splitting and changing, like the Devourers could not figure out how to predict what humans would do next. "They're having trouble with us," Jake said with growing excitement. "Look at this. Every other species follows logical patterns that they can learn and counter. But humans keep doing things that don't make sense." Lisa Hayes was studying another part of the wall. "Captain, over here. This section shows something interesting." Jake walked over to see what she had found. It was a display showing the current battle outside. The alien fleets were scattered and broken, but some ships were still fighting. And there at the edge of the battle was one small human ship still moving. The used Defiance was somehow still alive. "Sam, you beautiful bastard," Jake whispered. "You kept her flying." But as he watched the display, Jake saw something that changed everything. The Devourer ship they were inside was not just defending itself from the remaining alien ships. It was learning from them. Every weapon they fired, every tactic they tried was being absorbed and cataloged. The next time the Devourers attacked, they would be ready for everything the galaxy could throw at them. Every ship design, every weapon system, every battle plan would be useless. The war would be over before it started, unless Jake could do something to stop it. He walked back to the memory core and placed his hand against its surface. The moment his skin touched the strange material, his world exploded into light and sound and knowledge. He could feel the vast intelligence of the Devourer ship pressing against his mind like an ocean trying to drown him. But Jake Morrison had been drowning for 3 years, and he had learned how to breathe underwater. The ship's mind touched his, and in that instant of contact, Jake felt something he had not expected. The Devourer was not just a machine that learned from its enemies. It was lonely. It had been traveling through space for millions of years, consuming and studying, and never finding anything that could truly challenge it. Until now, for the first time in its ancient existence, the Devourer had found a species that could surprise it. Humans did not follow the logical patterns that other races used. They made decisions based on emotions and instincts that no computer could predict. They did impossible things for reasons that made no sense, and the Devourer wanted to understand them more than anything else in the universe. Jake smiled as the ancient mind tried to map his thoughts and failed. 3 years ago, when his ship was destroyed, the Devourers had tried to study him completely, but they had made a mistake. They had given him access to their systems while they learned from his. Now he was going to use that connection to teach them something new. He was going to teach them what it really meant to be human. Jake Morrison pressed both hands against the memory core and felt the mind of the Devourer ship crash into his thoughts like a tidal wave. The ancient intelligence was vast and cold and hungry for knowledge. It had consumed 1,000 civilizations and learned from each one. But now it was trying to understand something that had never made sense to it before. It was trying to understand what it meant to be human. The ship's mind tore through Jake's memories looking for patterns and logic. It saw his childhood on Earth where he dreamed of flying among the stars. It saw his first command and the pride in his father's eyes. It saw the Battle of Titan's Edge and the moment when everything he cared about was destroyed, but the Devourer could not understand why Jake had kept fighting after losing everything. It could not understand why humans would sacrifice themselves for strangers or why they would choose hope when logic said there was none. Jake felt the ship's confusion like a physical pain in his head. The scars on his face began to glow with a soft blue light as the technology in his body connected with the ship's systems. His metal leg grew warm and started to move on its own as circuits came alive that had been sleeping for 3 years. "Captain, what's happening to you?" Tony Miller shouted. Jake could barely hear him through the roar of information flooding his mind. The Devourer was showing him everything it had learned about humans. Every battle, every defeat, every small victory. But it was also showing him something else. It was showing him how to control it. The connection worked both ways. While the ship was studying Jake, he was studying it right back. He could see its systems and its weapons and its weaknesses. He could feel the other Devourer ships scattered across the galaxy, all connected to this one through quantum links that stretched across space and time. And he realized something that made his heart race with excitement. The Devourers were not individuals. They were all parts of one vast mind spread across millions of ships. If he could control this ship, he could control them all, but first he had to teach the ancient intelligence something new. Jake focused his thoughts and showed the Devourer what he had learned at Titan's Edge. Not the technical details of the battle, but the emotions behind it. The fear when his ship was being torn apart. The grief when his friends died around him. The rage that kept him alive when everything else told him to give up. The ship's mind recoiled from the raw human emotions like they were poison. It had studied fear and grief and rage in 1,000 species, but it had never felt them. It had cataloged them like items in a museum without understanding what they really meant. "You learn from our tactics and our weapons," Jake said out loud, even though he was speaking directly into the ship's mind, "but you never learn from our hearts. You think we're weak because we feel things you don't understand. You think emotions make us unpredictable and illogical." The corridors around them began to change. The walls shifted from cold metal to something that looked almost organic. The lights grew brighter and the air became easier to breathe. The ship was adapting to Jake's presence in ways it had never done before. "You're right that emotions make us unpredictable," Jake continued, "but that's not a weakness. That's our greatest strength. We don't just survive our battles. We become them." Tony and Lisa watched in amazement as Jake's body began to change. His scars were glowing brighter now, and his metal leg was moving with fluid grace, instead of the mechanical stiffness it had always had. Circuits were spreading under his skin like veins of light, connecting him to the ship's systems. Through the ship's sensors, Jake could see the battle outside. The remaining alien ships were fighting bravely, but they were losing. Their weapons and tactics were exactly what the Devourers expected. Every move they made had been predicted and countered, but the used Defiance was still out there. Sam Parker had somehow kept the old ship flying, despite damage that should have destroyed her. She was weaving between the Devourer ships like a ghost refusing to die. Jake smiled and reached out through the ship's systems to touch his friend's mind. "Sam, can you hear me?" he said across space. "Captain, is that you?" Sam's voice came back filled with wonder. "Sir, where are you?" "I'm inside the big one, Sam, and I'm about to do something that's never been done before. I need you to get everyone away from the Devourer ships. All of them. As far as you can go." "Sir, what are you planning?" "I'm going to teach these ancient machines what it really means to be human." Jake turned his attention back to the Devourer's mind. The ship was still trying to understand his emotions, but Jake had something else to show it. He opened his memories to the moment when he chose to board the ship instead of running away. The moment when he decided to risk everything for people who had laughed at him and called him broken. The Devourer's confusion was like a storm in Jake's head. It could not understand why he would sacrifice himself for beings who had shown him no kindness. It could not understand why humans would fight for others when logic said they should only fight for themselves. "This is what you never learned from all your studying," Jake said. "We don't fight just to survive. We fight because we choose to. We fight for people we love and people we've never met, and sometimes even for people who hate us. We fight because fighting is what makes us human." The ship's mind was changing. Jake could feel it struggling with concepts it had never encountered before. For millions of years it had been a perfect learning machine following pure logic and cold calculation. But now it was being infected by something new. Something warm and chaotic and beautiful. It was being infected by humanity. Jake pressed deeper into the ship's systems and found the quantum links that connected it to every other devourer in the galaxy. Through those links he could feel the vast network of ancient minds all thinking in perfect harmony, all following the same logical patterns they had used for eons. "You want to understand us," Jake said, "then understand this. We don't conquer our enemies, we become them. And we don't become them by learning their weaknesses. We become them by making them like us." He opened the quantum links and let his humanity pour through them like a virus spreading through a computer network. Every devourer ship in the galaxy suddenly felt something they had never experienced before. They felt Jake Morrison's grief for his lost friends and his hope for a better future and his love for the strange, broken species that had created him. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, devourer ships stopped attacking and started to change. Their cold metal hulls began to glow with warm light. Their perfect geometric shapes became more organic and flowing. Their ancient minds were being rewritten by emotions they had never known existed. Jake felt himself changing too. The ship's technology was spreading through his body, but it was not making him more machine-like. Instead, it was becoming more human. The circuits under his skin pulsed with warmth instead of cold logic. His metal leg moved with the grace of a dancer instead of the precision of a robot. He was no longer Captain Jake Morrison, the broken soldier who lost everything at Titan's Edge. He was something new, something that had never existed before. He was the bridge between humanity and the ancient intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. Through the ship's sensors he watched as other devourer vessels began to move away from populated worlds. Their hunger for consumption was being replaced by something else, curiosity about the strange species that had shown them a new way to exist. "Captain," Tony Miller said in a voice full of awe, "you did it. You actually did it." Jake turned to face his team and they saw that his eyes were no longer just blue. They held depths of light that seemed to contain entire star systems. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. "I didn't just stop them," Jake said. "I saved them. For millions of years, they've been alone in the universe, following the same cold logic over and over again. They were dying inside and they didn't even know it." He walked to a window that had not been there moments before and looked out at the stars. The battle was over. The surviving alien ships were regrouping and trying to understand what had happened. The devourer ships were moving away from them, but not in retreat. They were moving like they had somewhere else they needed to be. "What happens now, Captain?" Lisa Hayes asked. Jake smiled, and for the first time in 3 years it was a smile without any sadness in it. "Now we go home. And we show the galaxy that there's more than one way to win a war." The ship around them continued. to change, becoming something that was part machine and part living organism and part pure thought. It was becoming something that could carry both human dreams and ancient wisdom among the stars. Jake Morrison had walked into legend just as the title promised, but he had done more than that. He had shown that even the oldest and most terrible enemies could become something better when touched by the strange magic that made humans who they were. The galaxy would remember this day forever. The day when a scarred human warrior looked at impossible odds and chose to fight not with weapons or tactics, but with the one thing that made his species unique in all the universe. He fought with heart.